It was a sound that shouldn't have existed. Inside the sun-drenched pit lane of the Circuito de Jerez, a low, guttural growl vibrated through the asphalt, a sound far more violent and industrial than the elegant scream the world had come to expect from Yamaha. For 20 years, the Japanese giant had been the last holdout, the only factory still clinging to the Inline-Four engine. But as the garage doors of the Prima Pramac team creaked open in 2026, the silence of the paddock was shattered by a mechanical betrayal. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next. Behind the closed doors of a private test, the most dangerous rider in superbike history was about to climb onto a machine that had been rebuilt from the ground up to do one thing: end the dominance of the European V4s. This wasn't just a test session. It was a desperate gamble that would change everything for him, his team, and the entire 2026 season. For decades, Yamaha's YZR-M1 was the ballerina of MotoGP. It was smooth, it was agile, and in the hands of Valentino Rossi or Jorge Lorenzo, it was a precision instrument. But in the modern era of aerodynamics and ride height devices, that elegance had become a weakness. The Inline-Four was a square peg in a round hole, constantly being bullied on the straights by the raw, cheating power of the V4 engines from Ducati and KTM. But behind that calm expression of the Yamaha engineers, pressure was building fast. They knew that to survive, they had to kill their darling. The secret V4 project was born in the dark corners of Iwata, away from the prying eyes of the media. When the first prototype arrived at Jerez, it was draped in stealth black carbon fiber, looking more like a fighter jet than a motorcycle. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras. Yamaha didn't just need a new engine, they needed a rider who could tame a monster. And there was only one man with the arrogance and the talent to take that seat. But what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu was never supposed to be here. In the hierarchy of motorcycle racing, superbike riders are often looked down upon by the MotoGP elite, seen as production racers who can't handle the razor-thin limits of a prototype. But Toprak is different. He is the stoppie king, a rider who defies the laws of physics by entering corners on one wheel, braking so late that it makes his rivals' blood run cold. Inside the garage, whispers began spreading. Critics called his move to Yamaha a marketing stunt. Some believed he was too tall, too aggressive, and too used to the forgiving nature of Pirelli tires. They expected him to crash. They expected him to fail. After all, the transition from a BMW superbike to a 300-horsepower V4 prototype is like moving from a high-performance sports car to a Formula One machine. One mistake doesn't just end your race. It can end your career. Yet, as Toprak pulled on his helmet and looked at the telemetry monitors, the skepticism seemed to fuel him. He wasn't just fighting his rivals. He was fighting the expectations that had been placed on his shoulders since his very first race. But this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. The technical shift from an Inline-Four to a V4 isn't just about changing an engine, it changes the entire soul of the bike. A V4 engine is narrower, allowing for more extreme aerodynamics, but it is also significantly more violent in how it delivers power. For Yamaha, this was a radical departure. The engineers had to rethink the weight distribution, the electronics, and the cooling systems, all while the 2026 season was already breathing down their necks. According to insiders, the first few laps were a disaster. The bike was too nervous. It didn't want to turn. Toprak would dive into the fast corners of Jerez and the bike would protest, the rear tire chattering against the asphalt. The technicians on the pit wall watched the telemetry streaming in real time, their faces etched with concern. The data showed that while the top speed was finally there, the precision that made a Yamaha had vanished. Some mechanics claimed something felt off. The bike was too powerful for its own chassis. It was a 200 mph jigsaw puzzle that didn't fit together, and from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. By mid-morning, the atmosphere in the Pramac garage had turned icy. Toprak was 1.8 seconds off the pace, an eternity in MotoGP. In the world of elite racing, 1.8 seconds is the difference between a champion and a backmarker. He was struggling with the Michelin tires, which require a much more delicate touch than the Pirellis he had mastered in superbikes. The psychological pressure was mounting. Every time Toprak returned to the pits, he remained silent, staring at the data. He was trying to find a feel that wasn't there. In superbikes, he could slide the bike into the corner to make it turn. Here, the Michelin rear tire was so sensitive that if it started to slide, it wouldn't stop. It was a technical nightmare. Reports suggested that the team was considering tuning down the engine, making it smoother to help him adapt. But Toprak had a different idea. He didn't want a smoother bike. He wanted the bike to adapt to him. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. They call it the time attack phase. As the sun began to dip lower over the Jerez circuit, the team made a radical decision. They threw away the safe setup. They increased the engine braking to its maximum level and raised the ride height to give Toprak the leverage he needed to manhandle the bike. It was a do-or-die moment. When Toprak emerged from the pit lane for his final stint, the sound of the V4 was different. It wasn't just loud, it was purposeful. Telemetry engineers were stunned. Suddenly, the corner exit figures displayed on the screens weren't just higher than expected, they were record-breaking. The V4 engine was providing a level of aggressive acceleration that the Inline-Four could only dream of. Toprak appeared to be able to open the throttle more quickly out of tight corners, a weakness that had plagued Yamaha for 5 years. With the new engine and the updated tire mapping, the bike looked more stable, more anchored to the asphalt. But what happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. In several time attack attempts, the Turkish rider did the unthinkable. He recorded a lap time that nearly matched his own pole position from the previous race, on a bike he had only been riding for a few hours. This wasn't official race conditions, but for the team, the figures were staggering. Analysts present at the scene noted that his improvement far exceeded even the most optimistic projections. His trademark aggressive riding style actually seemed to suit the new engine's characteristics better than the old one. He was braking deeply, deeper than any of the factory Ducati riders, and then immediately snapping the bike upright to use the V4's explosive torque. It was a new way of riding a Yamaha. It was the Toprak way. The consistency was equally shocking. During a long-run simulation, tire degradation appeared incredibly stable. The lap times didn't drop off. They stayed in the red zone for 15 consecutive laps. Rumors suggested deeper tension behind closed doors at other teams, as rival managers began to realize that the superbike guy was suddenly a title threat. As the team packed up the crates for the highly anticipated Brazilian Grand Prix, the mood had shifted from desperation to quiet confidence. The V4 project was no longer a theory. It was a reality that had just been validated by a once-in-a-generation talent. But the question remains, can Toprak replicate this test magic under the lights of a real race weekend, with 20 other bikes screaming around him? The Brazilian circuit is a different beast, hot, abrasive, and unforgiving. If the V4 holds up there, the entire grid could be in for a massive surprise. Yamaha didn't just build a new engine. They built a bridge between two worlds. And as Toprak Razgatlıoğlu prepares to make his debut in Brazil, the rest of the paddock is starting to realize that the king of the other championship might just be the one to inherit the MotoGP throne. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm, as the whispers from the garage suggest that the version of the V4 we saw at Jerez was only running at 80%.